Women's political participation is critical to fulfilling the potential of democracy. Women, we are essential in contributing to and maintaining peaceful and secure communities and the promotion of sustainable development. There is a benefit to all of us when women realize this and exercise their full rights to participate in the political process. While Jamaica does not have a quota system, its national gender policy has laid down a desired target of 30% women in decision-making positions. To date, today, in 2020, we have achieved a remarkable level of representation by women in the legislature and in senior and middle management positions in government service. But for a very long time, women have not been well represented at the top tier, the upper echelon of the political arena. This is despite the fact that the majority of party workers, and well over 60% of party workers for both the JLP and the PNP, are indeed women. In 2011, 24% of the Senate was occupied by women, and in 2014, there was a slight increase to 29%. In the House of Representatives, female representation in both of those years stood at 12.7%. In the recent general elections, however, we saw the tides change as 18 women were elected to the House of Representatives, setting a brand spanking new record for female representation in the lower house. It was no different in the Senate, where 8 of the 21 senators appointed were women, raising the bar to a whopping 38%. It doesn't stop there, because good news, the Attorney General, the Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker of the House, they're all women. Despite this progress, though, there's still some obstacles to women's full political participation at the highest level. And today, we hope to thoroughly discuss some of these challenges. I'm Ashley Ann Foster, you're watching Hardline. We'll be right back after the break.
One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They are then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
Thank you for staying with us. Many societies across the world have been slowly stripping away the widespread culture of patriarchy, the traditional system that dictates that men have an overriding power and autonomy that women do not. This shedding of this oppressive patriarchal system was accelerated in the 19th and 20th century when feminism, which is the belief in social, economic, and political equality between the sexes, started to become more dominant, with women demanding more or equal rights. Here's a little history. So in 1938, the late great Una Marson, the only female writer at the time, asked in or around 1938 in her bold and daring debut piece, "Should women enter politics?" 1,000 times yes. I believe our women could outdo our men in politics. I throw out the challenge, who will be the first woman politician? By 1939, Una's question was answered when Mary Morris Knibb, the first woman to enter representational politics in Jamaica, entered the fray with the backing of Jamaican women from all walks of life. According to the history books, her resounding win silenced the naysayers who were of the view that women had no business whatsoever at all in politics. According to author Evelyn Smart, sisterhood was used as a weapon in that campaign. In 1944, the year of universal adult suffrage, which gave us all our right to vote, the bipartisan Jamaican Federation of Women's Club was formed, and 4 women, Iris Collins, Edith Dalton James, Mary Morris Knibb, and Marion Pavel, became candidates in the December 14, 1944 election. Of the 4, though, Only Iris Collins was successful at the polls, and it was an epic year because she was one of 130 candidates who contested for 32 seats in the lower house. In the post-44 general elections in 1949 and 1955, only one female MP remained in the House, with Rose Agatha Leon for the JLP replacing her female counterpart, Iris Collins, in the House. So Madame Rose Leon was known as the people's politician, who quipped that she had always been successful, but that her success came only from hard work and toil. She was bold, and for the annals, she's for the books of history. So she was the first female to be bold enough to switch allegiance from the JLP to the PNP, and the first female minister of government to have been selected for the executive, this is a cabinet, by both political parties. She believed in gender equality and was also the first Jamaican woman to hold the position of chairman in a political party. She was chairman for the Jamaican Labour Party. So throughout her career, she served as the Minister of Health and Housing, Minister of Local Government, Deputy Mayor of the KSAC, Special Advisor to the Minister of Social Security, and Chairman of the Road and Works Committee. In 1956, another big one, enter Edith Clarke, who was the first female member of the Senate. Miss Clarke was a well-respected anthropologist who published the famous book, My Mother Who Fathered Me. Miss Clarke also moved a private member's motion for the introduction of legislation to allow a married woman's income to be assessed separately from her husband's for income taxes. So this increased the number of women in government at the time to 2. In Jamaica's 4th general election in 1959, Miss Iris Winifred King joined Madame Rose Leon in the lower house of Parliament, and she remained parliamentary whip for her entire career. Miss King was also the only female appointee from the lower house to the Independence Constitution Committee and was the first female deputy speaker of the House. A 1997 print media publication aptly spoke to the moment and the time. The Speaker of the House vacates his seat and she presides over the afternoon session. Leader Florizel Glaspole brings it to the attention of the House, and all members rise to their feet and bow respectfully to Madam Speaker. Interestingly, this was not the first time that King was breaking the proverbial glass ceiling, as in 1958 she became the first female mayor of Kingston. She also was the first woman to be elected to the House of Representatives for the People's National Party. In the first election post-independence in 1962, Ms. King was the only woman to have won her seat and was reappointed as an MP under the new constitution. Joining her in the legislature thereafter was Esme Grant, and in the lower house, Maud Bennett, who served for 30 years and was the longest-serving female representative in the House with that 30-year unbroken record. Also of note were Hazel Hamilton, who defeated Pernell Charles Sr. in 1973 in a by-election. And then decades later came the appointment of Violet Nielsen as the first woman Speaker of the House in 1997. Since then, several more women have served in various capacities, but none have quite matched the feat accomplished by the Most Honorable Portia Simpson Miller when she became Jamaica's first female Prime Minister in 2006. And this was right after Prime Minister P.J. Patterson stepped down. But although Portia Simpson Miller lost that 2007 general election, she remained as opposition leader, and she was also Prime Minister for a second time when her party went on to win the 2011 general elections with twice as many seats as the incumbent Jamaica Labour Party. That was historic. It was a historic moment for Jamaica and Portia Simpson Miller. Let's take a look at it.
Today, the Jamaican people assisted us to rescue Jamaica and to restore the hope.
Being a woman in politics can oftentimes be challenging, but women consistently beat the odds. Take, for example, newly minted Manchester Central Member of Parliament, RHODA CRAWFORD. Being a political neophyte, it was never, ever expected that she would beat the 3-term MP for Central Manchester, Peter Bunting, but she did so resoundingly by over 1,000 votes. This was the first time since the 1980 election that the seat had been represented by the Jamaica Labour Party. So let's take a look at the swearing in of RHODA CRAWFORD as Central Manchester MP. couple weeks ago.
RHODA Moy Crawford.
Then there was Dr. Michelle Charles, who ousted the self-styled six-star general. Well, he was a six-star general, Dr. Fenton Ferguson. And Dr. Fenton Ferguson held the seat in St. Thomas Eastern comfortably since 1997 after defeating Michelle's father, veteran politician Pernell Charles Sr. So Dr. Charles won that seat by 700 votes. Another constituency which was a big surprise, wow, JLP candidate Crystal Lee unseated two-term MP Dr. Dayton Campbell with a margin of over 2,000. And let's not forget Lisa Hanna, who successfully defended her St. Anne Southeastern seat by a slim margin of 32 votes. And of course, she's now a fourth-term MP for the constituency. This is some of what Ms. Hanna had to say after she secured her win.
Hi everybody. In recent days I've focused my time on sitting with and listening to my people in Cecil, saying thank you and reaching out to persons who have been divided for too long. There's a reason why God has kept me here, and I will continue to walk in my purpose for the people.
Since then, the beauty queen turned politician declared that she's contesting for the presidency of the 82-year-old People's National Party. If successful in the November 7 internal polls, Ms. Hanna would become the second woman to be the president of the People's National Party. Now, Hardline, of course, met with some of you in the street to hear just what you had to say about women's participation in politics in Jamaica. Let's see what you said.
Well, it's right now, General. Honestly, the way Mr. Woman are president of politics right now is like, I don't know if it's an opportunity or they are there to do a natural. So first of all, that's to walk out them long. But I feel it's a fair chance. We see the global thing, all body work towards the whole thing now. So they are coming now and move from out. So give it an opportunity so we'll all more deal with the whole thing then. It's a good look.
Hold it more. So my man them can go on. Put in do man them, because do man them are going to work better on them. Hold it more. Some boy can go on. Come out of my party, go on. Yeah.
Over the years, women has contributed a lot. Portia did well as an MP and a party leader and Prime Minister. And I mean, they know what we as the people want in terms of what we go through. I don't think right now man contributes as much as woman.
ARC is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of building materials in Jamaica. We have been serving our global customers and partners, from builders, contractors, interior designers, with innovation leveraging technology, superior quality, service and efficiency for almost 20 years. At ARC, we are committed to ensure that all products are adequately stocked, and by achieving this, we have managed to be one of the premier carriers of the largest inventory in Jamaica.
Thanks for tuning into Hardline. We're going to talk about what it's like to be a woman in politics in Jamaica. We're joined by MP for Manchester Central, Rhoda Moy Crawford, Councillor for the PAPINE Division and MP Caretaker for the St. Andrew Eastern Constituency, VENESHA Phillips, and MP for Southwest St. Andrew, the veteran politician, Angela BROWN-BURKE. We're also joined by new MP, Dr. Michelle Charles from Eastern St. Thomas. Ladies, welcome to Hardline. And of course, we're going to ask you the hard questions. So we have to start with the bunting slayer, Rhoda Moy Crawford. How did you do it? Are you surprised that you did it?
Well, I'm not surprised that I won, but I'm surprised by the margin. I expected to win by about 200. But you know, I'm a daughter of the soil, and not just a daughter of the soil who is merely from the constituency. I've lived in several communities. While I was growing up, my mother moved to all of the different divisions, several different homes in each division. So the people know me. I've always been going back and giving back to my community long before I decided to enter into representational politics. But apart from the daughter of the soil factor, my campaign director, who is a former vice president of G2K, Ms. Rayana Wright, who would have had much experience working with other candidates in top seats. The first thing we did when she came on stream, we did a PD by PD analysis of all the PDs across the constituency for the last 3 elections. So as far back as Sally Portius, Danville Walker, and then St. Aubin Bartlett. And what we did, we looked at the polling divisions that we had never won, and we decided to go into those communities to compromise the PNP base. And then in the PDs that we've always been winning, we made sure that when we entered in those PDs, those communities from those PDs, we made sure to energize our base and energize our party work.
Wow. Well, Venesha, you've been a veteran councillor. You are a veteran councillor. What's it like to be a woman in Jamaican politics? You just ran a seat, you lost. I know it hurts because my beat did hurt too. So tell us about that. What are you up to?
I mean, of course, disappointed by the loss, but it is a part of the process, and I understand it. So bouncing back is not that difficult. Being a woman in politics though in Jamaica is actually quite difficult. You have to deal with the testosterone in the political room all the time. As a female, you really have to do more than your male counterpart within the party's sphere. You have to demonstrate more your capacity and even fight your way to ensuring that there's a space at the table for you. And so I believe that it is important though for women not to be deterred, but to actually get involved, because the more of us who are involved in the process and we're making our contribution at the level and at the standard, you know, that is accepted as a very high standard of delivery, service delivery on the part of a representative, then of course we will ensure that we continue to have a space at the table. And that of course we will be given the opportunity to lead, you know, as the positions become available.
Well, Michelle, now dealing with the testosterone in the room, that's a little bit different for you because your father really is a politician exemplar. Tell us a little bit about that. Do you think that you have an edge because of your father's political participation over the decades?
I might say that I have a little edge, yes, because I am from a political family. We have grown up around politics our entire life. And so we were taught to serve. We were taught to treat everyone fairly and kindly and to listen very well. So that gave me an edge, I think, yes.
And how do you feel now? I mean, you took down Fenton Ferguson. That is a feat within itself. How did you do that?
Well, that was very enjoyable. Like I've said before, that was the sweetest extraction I've ever done in my entire life, my entire career. Dr. Ferguson and I get along quite well, but it was just really time for him to step down, but he didn't want to, so I had to extract him.
Wow. Angela Brown-Burke in the bastion of Southwest, the PNP bastion. Now, you've come up all the way through the ranks. I remember your internal selection where I think as campaign spokesperson for your opponent. Now, give us some sage advice. Women in politics, what has your journey been like? You're now in a safe seat. What would you say to young politicians watching and to the young politicians on the panel?
The first thing is really to love people, to like being around people, and to really have a passion for service and for understanding that you are there to help persons improve conditions, but you are certainly not there as a master. It's not a master-servant relationship. I think that is the first thing, a genuine love for people and desire to serve. I believe, too, that although it's difficult, it's easier on the ground, meaning that the political party itself is probably the hardest part of where you have to serve. Once you're on the ground, talking to people, being your authentic self, you know, understanding what the problems are, working with them and fighting for them, then it's easier. And quite frankly, on the ground like that, sometimes we get away with things that men cannot get away with. You know, the relationship you build, how you talk to people. Some men just can't talk to people in that same kind of way and get away with it. So there's that part of it. But it's really that genuine desire to serve and to take nothing for granted.
Well, amen. Rhoda, what were your impediments? A lot of persons feel, including, well, a lot of our listeners, that women have a harder time in politics. Now, what were your impediments in the general election, leading up to the general election when you became a candidate?
Well, you know, what I don't know if I would call it an impediment really, because like Angela said a while ago, when you're actually on the ground and once you develop a relationship with the people and they see that you genuinely care and they love you, they accept you, they welcome you, and they help to make your journey much smoother. But one impediment generally, and it doesn't only go for me, but I realize that many young people, when they offer themselves for leadership, and it's not just politics, as females were often the victim or subject of smear campaigns. It's always for the males, when the males achieve much, oh, it's, oh, well done, congrats. When the ladies achieve or step into leadership, sometimes there are a lot of negative comments. Boy, I wonder how she got there, you know, is who she know, and, you know, that sort of thing. So, of course, you would have heard whispers, not just, you know, about me, but about many other young females in general. Who do they know? Where are they getting the money from? And, you know, we have to move away from that sort of thing as a society, because for me and many of my colleagues on both the PNP and the JLP, if we were not strong women, many of us perhaps would not continue on this journey, because it can be very daunting at times, the smear campaigns that females have to contend with.
Do you remember some of the things that they said about you? All of you?
Well, like I said, it's just generally some questions as to, you know, where she getting money, where these young girls get these $1 million to be entering into seats. And I thought that was very unfair, especially, well, I can speak for myself and my campaign. When I started my campaign activities in Manchester Central, or just my general outreach, different people, my friends, people from the business community, people, it was a real example of a grassroots support kind of campaign. People who I didn't know would send me a message on Facebook. People call me, "Boy, Rhoda, I see what you're doing some work in the constituency. I like it. How can I help you with a black drum? How can I, you know, deposit some water?" So like I said, you know, I was taught very early in high school. I will never forget while I was at Knox. My principal taught us that you have to learn to tell your own story. Because unless you begin to tell your own story, it will continue to be his story, her story, and their story about you.
VENESHA.
And so I'm very happy for social media because it allowed me to tell my own story.
Amen. VENESHA, Angela, Michelle, do you feel the same way? And do you feel that the country is truly moving towards gender parity, or what they call gender parity? Or are women merely tokens in a political narrative?
I don't think that women are tokens, but I do believe that it still is difficult. The recent results would have shown that we are making progress, but it's still difficult. And, you know, we have to also remember the challenges we face don't just come from men. They come from our sisters as well, in terms of the not believing that you can make it, not having faith, joining in the bashing, and so on. So it is difficult. As Rhoda said, we have to be strong. If I wasn't strong, I would just not be here. But I also believe that as women, getting to where we have learned we have developed a certain level of confidence. It's not, and that confidence in self, while remaining grounded, I think is what is going to keep us where we are, doing the things that we need to do to make the difference. And I think that is what has to kind of guide us.
Yes. Michelle, now starting the dialogue and looking deeper into what obtains, there has been a shift. Now, in the 2016 election, we didn't see as many women fielded by the Jamaica Labour Party. Was that a conscious decision, or was it a gamble? Did women fight their way into these positions, or was space created at the table by the JLP?
I think that the Jamaica Labour Party is quite inviting to women. I can only speak for myself. I chose Eastern St. Thomas because of my love for St. Thomas and the people of St. Thomas. And I did have some ups and downs. So I really did have to really have faith and strength and fight my way there. But I was highly supported by the leaders of the Jamaica Labour Party, the executive branch of the Jamaica Labour Party.
VENESHA, was that your experience too? Did you feel that the PNP has been creating the space that it used to create in the past, possibly? We're not seeing the women's movement. We're not seeing the things of the 80s and the 90s that persons felt made the PNP great.
I think that we have been having discussion in the People's National Party, and there is the thought process to increase, greater participation at the representational level for women in the party. I'm one of those persons who, however, who hold a very different view in terms of just how we go about that. I don't believe it should be done in the form of tokenism. I actually believe that we should basically put ourselves forward, make ourselves available to representation, and allow ourselves to naturally, emerge. Of course, the system is so designed that you will have obstacles in your way. But the truth be told is that, like our male counterpart, I believe that we should strive to stand out. I don't really want to be chosen based on my gender. I want to be chosen based on my capacity to make the contribution at the level. And so I've never been part of that conversation about whether or not we have enough. I believe that enough women, more women need to step forward and claim that space at the table rather than wait to be invited to the table or accommodated, because that is where we become pawns in a game rather than partners at the table. I believe when you think about the political space, particularly in the PNP, if you don't have intrinsic motivation, then I'm sorry, you're going to fizzle and you will disappear from the system. If you, as they say in the streets, if you're afraid of yai, you won't name head. And so the fact is, if you're someone who cowers easily or you get daunted very easily, then this is definitely not the space for you.
Okay,
space of
VENESHA, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. You're watching Hardline. We have the most brilliant and beautiful women in politics. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Hardline. Thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, we have RHODA, VENESHA, Angela, and Michelle, your political servants. It's such a privilege. Now, back to something that Angela just said a while ago. Women, we tend to be our own worst enemies. And I'm not sure if everybody at home knows that the majority of party workers, the people who run up and down and get the voters to the, to the polls and get the ballots in the box, 51% of us are the voting populace. Why is it that so few of us are at the table? We're working, we're performing, and yet we're exalting men as opposed to pushing each other forward. RHODA?
Boy, Ashley, I myself would like to find out what the real reason is behind that. But I too can testify that some of the time our biggest fights or biggest attacks do come from female themselves. And even for my own journey, I have been more supported by the males in the political field, even from my days in G2K. And, I think when women support women, we can go a far way. This time around, though, to be honest, the new female MPs in the JLP, we created a little WhatsApp group to give support to each other. And that worked out very well. Myself, Michelle Charles, Tova Hamilton, Kerencia, Tamika Davis, Natalie Rodriguez, we were all a part of that little group, and we crafted that little group and gave support and strength to each other. And I saw where it worked. So I'd want to encourage us to try some of that some more and not just lip service. And funnily, I won't call the names now to get into trouble, but I got a lot of support and encouragement from females in the PNP.
Oh Lord, call the names. VENESHA, was it you? Angela?
If it's moral support, that is something you can never apologize for. I always encourage women, whichever party they are from, to get involved in politics. So from that standpoint, women, wherever you are, get involved in your community. I'd rather you choose my party, but if you chose the JLP, just get involved.
Angela, give us a little bit of history now. To prepare for this program and extensive research, and especially from when I entered politics in 2013 and working, supporting Beverly Manley when she was considering writing a book, we read about this women's caucus. What happened to the caucus? And is that something that you, as a senior member of Parliament, are you going to bring that back to the fore for the benefit of all of you on screen right now? Bipartisan.
You know, well, we have been talking about the caucus, the women's caucus. From time to time, we have spoken about that, and we're talking, that's Parliament. But I want to go back a little bit about why it is that we don't see more women progressing. In any single system where there is a dominant culture that facilitates males, unless there is a determined, deliberate effort to nurture, encourage, and support women, it takes a longer to get us there. And therefore, I make absolutely no apology for saying I do encourage a supportive environment for women in the politics. So, for example, and I mean, I like to talk about Region 3 in particular at the local government level. For years, what we have been doing is encouraging women to be trained, to come together, to work together, to join local government. And it is similar to the effect that RHODA was talking about, because so many of us was joining now the Jamaica Political Women's Caucus. What that meant is that we developed a relationship. I don't believe that I have gotten any position simply because I'm a woman, because in the politics, you have to be better than many of your counterparts to be able to get the same position that they have gotten. So I'm not afraid of people thinking that I'm getting it simply because it's tokenism, because I don't believe in that either.
So you don't believe in...
I don't believe in tokenism, but I do believe that often we have to create a support.
Gender quotas, and before we go over to Michelle, this is an interesting point. Gender quotas, we saw Dr. Phillips appoint 4 males and 4 females. Do you believe in that kind of a system?
I don't believe in quotas simply because quota might even limit us to what it is that should be our natural due. There are countries, I look at Cuba, for example, I look at Canada when they had at least 50% of the cabinet being women. It takes political will to make it happen. And I think that is what we have to nurture. That is what we have to encourage. I'm not really for quotas, although I do understand that there are times when you have to start by establishing quotas so we work towards it. But that is really when we don't have the political will.
Michelle, to bring you in now, a lot of criticism that women bear the brunt of when they get into representational politics or any leadership role is that they begin to forget that they are women and that they start to play by the rules of men. Do you believe that?
When you're in politics, which is a blood sport, and most people know that politics is not an easy career to enter, you as a woman, you have more love and you are more nurturing, but you have to be extremely strong. There's so much more criticism. So if we decide to handle a situation in a different manner, people might think that we start to act like a man, but it's not that we're acting like a man. We're just strong. That's just how it is. You have to act a certain way in politics. If it seems masculine, it's because there's not enough women doing it, and you haven't seen it with other women, and so you think it's masculine. But no, it's us. We have to fight for what we want, and that's women's strength.
Yeah, and Ashley, if you'd permit me, I just wanted to add, in addition to what Michelle said, is that politics, it requires you to be very strong. You have to take on some masculinity. But you don't, what is important is that you don't lose the feminine touch, the nurturing and the caring side, but you have to be strong. So it's not a matter of playing by the male book of the men, but you have to be tough. You have to be a little rough.
Is that at the risk of losing who you are at your core?
But just imagine if I went and I started crying when they were demonstrating about me on TV. I wouldn't look like a good leader. But if I'm strong, they're going to say I'm more like a man. No, I'm just a strong female.
All right.
That's what I am.
And I think that's what we have to do. Being strong is not a male trait.
Yes.
Correct.
VENESHA, now...
Why is it that if you're being strong or being tough, it's that you are taking on male traits? No, women are strong and women are tough. We do it in different ways. And I don't think that we should describe those as being taking on male traits at all.
And, Ashley, when I look to, at the seats that the women in the JLP have taken on, they're all tough constituencies. Even those who are second-time MP or third-time MP, you look at Juliet Holness, she wasn't placed in a safe seat. You look at Shine, it was never a safe seat that she got. Juliet Cuthbert, Favour, it's not an easy seat. And all of us as new candidates, some people were wondering if we were committing political suicide when they saw the seats that we took up. So it really requires some level of strength.
It did. Now, gender, Venesha, men and women in partnership together. Now, RHODA just told us that the men supported her more. But how do we get men to support us in this cause here, wherein we will need to recondition our own minds to be a part of the solution so that women can support women and men can be feminists too, for lack of better terminology?
I think when we move away from being competitors and see ourselves as partners and try to pull each other up, then we will actually get the kind of balance that is required. I believe, however, that gender aside, the rivalry is rife regardless of whether or not you're dealing with men or women. And so even our male counterparts, you have to understand there's a big issue there for ego in terms of the men in the room who, if, for example, you're going for a similar position as they are, or even the same position and you're vying for that, just imagine how they feel almost emasculated if the woman should come out the victor. I suppose we have to get to that place where the culture is different and they don't see it as, them being emasculated, but in fact, that their partner, their counterpart, was capable enough or even more capable in the instance and would have succeeded. I think there is still in our minds as women, or in the minds of many women, that our place is really behind the men rather than beside them. In the politics, it has been my experience. Certainly, for example, at the Region 3 leadership level, what you're exposed to is a thinking that the men, and what they think is supposed to be given primacy of place over that which you think. Women tend to want to trust the men's experience over their own experiences, which is unfortunate because while you can learn from each other's experience, that doesn't mean that the person would come to the table with more experiential learning than yourself. We learn in different ways and we have different, things that we bring to the table in terms of the assets that we would carry to the process. We have to start seeing ourselves essentially, Ashley, as partners, even if it's rivals, friendly rivalry. And it should be encouraged across gender. And that is how we will get, the men to start respecting our roles as partners. With women, I believe we have to get to that place where jealousy is not so much at the fore. I think a lot of the problems we face as women comes from that jealous streak, whether it is professional jealousy, personal jealousy. Jealousy is really bad for politics. It's like a cancer and it can gnaw away at really a good system. So because we don't want another female to excel beyond us, it's difficult for us to support that person, even when the person is in a better position to get to the post first. We refuse to give them that little push that would get them over the line simply because we believe that they shouldn't get there, before us. And that is something that we really have to change.
So you're basically saying bad mind Achille, from a policy perspective. Now,
and Ashley, in addition to that, I learned when I was studying literature at the University of the West Indies, I learned a term, the hegemony. And I think we're coming from that. We have inherited it, the hegemonic society where males are taught to be superior to women and the role of women was limited to the home. But in recent times, women have been defined the odds paying more attention to career and self-development. So I think it's a whole culture that we inherited. So we have to be very conscious and deliberate in getting more females into areas, not just politics, areas that are seen as male dominated. It's even so in the music industry. A female comes out and release a song and you'd think that the females would want to buy the songs and support the songs. But no, some of these same females are quicker to support the males, and it's not that the females are not producing good lyrics.
Yes.
So it's in all the professions that are seen as predominantly male professions where females, encounter those challenges.
Right. So breaking the cycle of patriarchy from a policy perspective.
That is the problem.
You look at our laws, and since the 70s and the 80s, we really haven't seen any gender purposed or gender passionate laws. And the sexual harassment bill has been on the table for a very, very long time. Abortion has been on the table for a very, very, very long time. And if you go back and go through all of the domestic violence, even though that was updated, I believe, in 2004, there's a lot left to be done. Sexual abuse, children, anything to do with the most vulnerable in our society and women. What are you guys going to do about that? We're going to take a quick break, think about it, and we're going to ask you when we come back. Welcome back. You're watching Hardline. Of course, we're going to dive right back into it with RHODA, VENESHA, Angela, and Michelle, your members of parliament and your councillor, your political servants. Now, the legislation, the bills that are on the table, the topics that we don't like to talk about, for example, abortion, the amendments that must be made, for example, to the Domestic Violence Act. What are you guys going to do about it?
Listen, I remember when I got into Parliament, the sexual harassment bill was on the table. I wasn't even named to the committee, and I went every session because I thought it was important. I believe that we're going to have to move it. You know, this idea of abortion being illegal and being punishable as it is ridiculous. You know, and I think that, and I understand also the reason why we have not pushed ahead. Jamaica is really a religious country, and therefore a lot of religion has kind of shaped our mores, you know, and the culture. But I believe that we have been having the discussion, and I believe that it is time in 2020 for us to revise these laws that do not punish women for doing some things that, you know, we have a right to make those decisions.
Okay.
And certainly in terms of the sexual harassment, I remember sometimes in the committees, the things that some of the men found funny, you know, they thought was ridiculous, you know. So what is it now? You're going to ban catcall? I mean, how does that hurt? And I believe we have to get our men to understand what's happening to our women, how it makes women feel, and we are going to have to legislate it so that women have recourse.
Michelle, is this something that you thought about, your responsibility as a female member of parliament to the women of Jamaica, to make our voices heard, to represent us, to break the cycle of patriarchy?
Well, I believe that to whom much is given, much is expected. So many of us want to be at the table. We are now at the table. So I know that those women that see us are expecting us to go out and fight for women's rights. And that's what we should do. We're at the table now. There is no excuse. We need to make sure that these bills are passed and fight for the rights of women.
Yes.
VENESHA, RHODA?
And well, just to add, because I thought long and hard, and the fact that it's not good enough to say that 18 women are now in the lower house, and we have about 8 in the upper house, and of course we have a female speaker of the house, a female deputy speaker, a female deputy house leader. I think Jamaica, the Jamaicans and the rest of the Caribbean, I think they'll be looking to see what will be the contribution of all these females and how do we intend to fight for and protect the rights of our sisters. And so correct. I take the responsibility seriously, and these bills especially, I intend to do my own research. And if I am allowed and can make contributions to the debates, then I'll be very happy and excited to do so.
Well, I hope that you create that space for yourself, so the next time we speak, you won't say, if you're allowed, you'll say, I made. And I did, and this is what.
Oh, you know her. She will make sure.
So, VENESHA, an evaluation of the policy contribution of women. A lot of people feel that the policy contribution to the dialogue, to the debates in both houses has been somewhat lacking. Private members' motion raised by Juliet Cuthbert-Flynn, most recently on abortion. But who else can we point to in the last decade who has made a substantial contribution? And what do we need to do about that as John and Jane public? To bolster our women and to demand better.
Certainly the advocacy at the parliamentary level has been limited, but I do believe that there is a space for the discussion at the community level, because even though we are attempting to move towards the legislative framework, we also have to remember that if we don't take the discussion to the people so they understand and appreciate the importance of these legislations to them and their own situations, then these will be there and things will continue to happen and there is no enforcement. And the reality is that there are civic groups and NGOs that are taking on these subject areas in terms of just the treatment of women generally and the issues, the gender-based issues that are affecting us as a society, and even those that touch and concern our children. But the reality is that as political leaders, we have to find a way to start having the conversation in a serious way with women across the country in our dormitory areas or divisions or constituencies on an ongoing basis and not just on a one-off situation, so that we can help to also reculture their thinking, help them to understand when it is important for them to raise those red flags, when it is important for them to seek guidance in relation to experiences they may be having that, you know, would be hurting them and hurting their families and their children. And so it is at that level that the relevance of the legislative framework will become more apparent. Of course, it is limited, but we would like to see more of that with more women in the parliament. There are many more voices there that have been added. So we expect the delivery, you know, from our female folk in parliament. But I believe more so that as a country, we will be able to grow in terms of, you know, just looking at the issues that touch and concern our women and the vulnerabilities that are often not spoken about if we take it to the communities.
So, Michelle, your political year ahead, how do you see it? What is your plan? What do you have in line for your constituency and for your parliamentary contributions?
Well, I was just put on 2 committees, so I'm going to be doing a lot of research so that I can represent very well. With regards to Eastern St. Thomas, we have quite a few things that are critical with regards to the needs of the constituency here. We need water, so I'm planning to fight as much as I can to get water to those who are in need. The road work is in process. I have to monitor that. We have many students right now that are in need of internet. So I'm writing and meeting as many people as I can to represent the people here in Eastern St. Thomas. So right now we're just trying to attack the most critical things. But long term, we have an exciting year ahead of us. The highway is on its way. The Morant Bay Urban Center, Eastern St. Thomas is going to be the place to be. We have tourism plans. We're looking forward to building and letting people know about Bath Fountain. So come to Eastern St. Thomas, everyone. Come and try out Fish Cove and eat some good fish and drink some coconut and just come and enjoy us. We are going to be better than Ocho Rios because we're going to be 20 minutes away from Kingston International Airport. So look out for Eastern St. Thomas. We're a diamond in the rough. We have special people here. They're dying for jobs and an opportunity. And I'm going to go everywhere I can internationally to beg for money so that we can bring investors to our area here in Eastern St. Thomas. So look out for us. Yes,
we have to talk about that. Angela Brown-Burke, now as a seasoned politician, how important is money? The CDF is very limited. What does the politician have to do to bring all of these dreams, as we have heard Michelle's, to fruition for their constituents?
When I tell you, I mean, money is really very important. And as you said, CDF is very limited. And unfortunately, persons believe that 20 million is a lot of money to do a lot of things in the constituency, which it just is not. And so the truth is that you have to build partnerships. You have to find stakeholders who can help to fund some of the activities that you're doing, both locally, meaning from the constituency, outside of the constituency. We have the diaspora and persons who grew up, for example, in the constituency and who are now living abroad, who are interested in giving back to the community. What I've been able to rely on for a lot of some of the stuff we do is that there are a lot of individuals who grew up in the community, who still live in Jamaica, but not necessarily in the community, and they will give back. So they will give back in terms of health fairs, in terms of just that kind of welfare and giving back. And a lot of that is there as well. But the truth is that we're going to have to use partnership, and that's how we're going to get a lot of stuff happening.
And what does your term look like, Angela, next year? We're in the middle of a
Yeah,
pandemic.
I'm excited. The truth is that when you're in government, you can rely a lot on other aid from government because unfortunately our system works is that the government will make sure you get this done or that done and so on. And so what I'm looking at is really light and water immediately because based on some of the improvement in the area, our light and water has suffered from that. So I'm working on that. And then outside of that is around making sure that individuals have the training so that the skills so that they can set up their own businesses or go get employed. And also just build the leadership and advocacy so people can find their voice. And so that I am not the only one talking on behalf of the community. I am not the only one out there trying to make sure things happen, but that we have an empowered and strong Southwest and Andrew working with me to improve their quality of life.
Rhoda, you've done a lot, as you told us prior to the election, and I'm sure you've done a lot after. Now, does your term look similar to Angela's and Michelle's? And,
yes, and
if you could ask for anything, any assistance as a member of parliament for your constituents, what would that be? Would it be an increase in the CDF?
Well, we know that the CDF is very limited, and I support what Angela said about partnership and what Michelle said about seeking help. But of course, we're going to be doing a lot of partnership. I'm going to be looking at the different agencies that can provide us with some assistance too, and just members of the general business community. But outside of that, my general focus or my 3 top priority areas will be water, providing access to education and training, and road rehabilitation. But apart from that, and I'm not afraid to say it, no, I'm not afraid to say it, what I've been doing from about 16 years of age, I have been studying the females in politics on both the JLP side and the PNP side.
Very well.
And I am looking at best practices, what each of them, what they have done to be successful. And I'm not afraid to ask my senior members in the JLP for help. And as a matter of fact, I'm happy that many of the senior members have been holding our hands as new MP. And I was telling Angela before the break, don't be surprised if I come over there to ask her a few questions. She's actually one of the persons who I've admired as a youngster. And VENESHA has always been providing moral support. So I just want to say to Jamaica and to young people, even though I may wear a green shirt and another female may wear an orange shirt, it is okay for us to put the parties and politics aside and be people. We can support each other. It doesn't mean that you're disloyal to your party and the policies of your party, but building relationship is very important. And as females, it doesn't matter which color you wear, the issues affect all of us.
Yes. VENESHA, Rhoda just mentioned the best practices of females. What contributions have women made to our political landscape, for those who don't know?
I believe that the contribution of women, and I suppose when you talk about politics and you think of women, the first person would come to mind would be Portia Simpson Miller, and of course Olivia Babsy Grange. In terms of the women who have been there, some of us who would still remember the intervention of Madame Rose Leon would be able to talk about just how they engendered the support of the grassroots people and how they placed at the fore the interest of those persons. So I believe that we do not do enough in terms of ensuring that our young people in particular understand the role that women continue to play and would have played in this politics. We talk about just how Portia would have shattered that glass ceiling. We know, how chauvinism works, not just in politics, but in Jamaica, in organizations generally. And so she would have had to struggle that periphery in a way that many of us now don't necessarily have to do in the same way. And so we have to, pay homage to the fact that women like Portia, like Babsy Grange and others who would have served in and around their generation, and women now who are making the contribution. If you look at what's happening in the PNP, you have Lisa Hanna stepping up to the plate to become party president. In her bid to do that, we have to also examine, what are the good takeaways? What are the things that we can improve on? And what are those things that we don't want to see repeated, in terms of just how women conduct themselves and their affairs in terms of the service that they continue to give. But we must allow for the process of education in our country in terms of the culturing, in terms of just the knowledge base of the role and responsibilities and who would be discharging those functions, that our young people understand the role played by women from where we're coming to where we are now and where we could get to if we continue to engender the space that will allow women to actually grow and make that contribution.
That's powerful. Thank you, Venetia.
And actually, you know what I'd want to add, because apart from the issues that we have to resolve, fixing the road and fixing the water, it's important to build relationships. And in addition, ditto to what Venetia said about the female she identified. But I'd want to even highlight the late Shiny Robinson as it concerns grassroots politics. She taught us as youngsters the importance of being on the ground with your people, being there in their sad times, being there in their happy times. So those are things we can emulate. And in terms of delivery, action, Anne has been an inspiration for all of us. She has taken representation to a whole new level.
Wow.
I wanted to probably add, because some of the names that have been called, a lot of persons know them. There are some other women that have been doing tremendous work that often we don't talk about. And I'm thinking of Jeanette Grant Woodham. I'm thinking of Donna Scott Motley. I'm thinking of even Jennifer Edwards, Aluna Samba, Merlene Daly, who have taken the Jamaica Political Women's Caucus. And they have really tried to make sure that they help to mold, support, and train women as both candidates and campaign managers. And that has been a difficult task. I mean, I've worked with them for some time, and they are behind the scenes. But this is also tremendous contribution that they are making to the women who are coming up. And it's not just JLP, PNP, NDM, I remember church, but it's women in public life. And I believe that we also have to take our proverbial hats, lift up proverbial hats off to these women who have also played that role. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, I am totally indebted to Portia Simpson Miller, not just about Southwest St. Andrew, but for just being that role model that can say to women, and Babsy, that can say to women, yes, there is a role you can play. There is absolutely no position that is too high, too good for you as a young girl to aspire to.
Thank you, Angela.
And actually, can I just say that as young women in politics, I think we should continue to not only encourage each other, but encourage every woman that you see and young girls. When I think about Portia Simpson Miller, and I call her Auntie Portia, I remember I was about 10 years old, and she said to me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I told her, "I want to be the first female prime minister of Jamaica." And she bent down to my level because she was quite tall, and she said, "Michelle, I will be the first prime minister, lady prime minister of Jamaica, and you can be the second." But she always encouraged me. And I think that I've always remembered that. And I think when we see young women struggling in any manner, just remember that one little soft word, one word of encouragement can change someone's life. So I think that's something we should remember as women.
Thank you. And this was such a beautiful conversation and discussion. Thank you. I'm sure that you all have inspired the youngest person, the youngest little woman who wishes to be a politician one day, to step up and believe that her voice matters, and to believe also that she can. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us on Hardline. Love and blessings.
Thank you so much for having us.
This is Hardline. I'm Ashley Ann, and I'll see you soon.